willing, I'll see to its fulfillment. I assure you, we shall implement the report.
I guess there was a mix-up there, but the president talked about the fact that he will implement that report, and again, that every of the promise that he has made is going to fulfill. We'll bring you the details of what he said. I guess there was a mix-up there, but let me come to you, Senator Mamora. He said he's going to implement that particular report. But again, just a few days ago, I heard that the National Assembly are moving to implement the amendment to the Constitution. Thinking about these two issues, does it work? How is it going to work with the recommendations and the implementation of the confab recommendations?
Well, let me start by commending the conferees, because some of us had reservations, and our reservations then were premised essentially on the mode of implementation. Mr. President has told us that, yes, as much as possible, it will ensure the implementation. And that's what I'm waiting for, really, how those recommendations or resolutions, if you like, will be implemented. Against the backdrop of the procedure, as it were, for amending the Constitution. I know by virtue of experience that in the legislature, that whatever recommendations, they were not in tandem with the thinking of the National Assembly, you can be sure those recommendations will be jettisoned. I can assure you that.
So the National Assembly must be carried along?
Because I don't know how else these things will be implemented without going to the National Assembly, and I would want to feel that it will be through the process of amendment into the Constitution. And of course, don't forget, the process of amendment is such that there has to be the recommendation, or whatever the National Assembly comes up with will then be sent to the state houses of assembly for concurrence, okay, by 2/3. So we are looking at a situation where if some of these things are not aborted at the level of the National Assembly, they could be aborted at the level of the state houses of assembly. Because you will need 2/3.
Senator Mamora, let me just bring to you what he said. Very instructive. He said we have successfully delivered on that promise as we established the 2014 National Conference headed by Justice Legbo Kutugi. After months of deliberation, which did not come without its challenges, the conference concluded its assignment and has handed its report to me. I have made a firm commitment that we would act on the recommendations of the conference. These have started by setting up the ministerial committee headed by the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation to work out the modalities for implementing the report. Every promise I make, God willing, I will see to its fulfillment. I assure you, we shall implement the report. Those are some of the quotes from the address of President Jonathan. Do you think those words were very... I'm very sure that he's very conscious about the selection of his words there.
President Jonathan might mean well in terms of those recommendations, but we're not in a military regime where he could bulldoze his way and get those recommendations implemented. I'm saying the recommendations will have to pass through the due process as we have laid in the Constitution.
If President Jonathan were sitting on the other side of the screen now, watching this program, and some of the ministerial committee members are also listening. You spent 2 terms there, 8 years at the Senate. In terms of lobbying, which is popular in politics, in a democratic setting, what would you advise so that that particular recommendation is not jettisoned?
Well, you see, you must also appreciate that we don't even know what will be forwarded to the National Assembly, because the ministerial committee is sitting on the issue, on the recommendations. The recommendations might still even be altered somehow, because Mr. President has not told us that the entire report is being turned over to the National Assembly. That's a different thing, in which case it's like, just passing through the the presidency and then the party. But it's a ministerial committee sitting on it. So which means there's a possibility that certain recommendations might still be tampered with. For example, the recommendation on the, what is it now? This revenue sharing was inconclusive. It was inconclusive, and it was like, the presidency was asked to now determine what would be done, taking cognizance of the provision of the Constitution and all that. So they are not really sacrosanct. That's what I'm saying. And having said that, again, the National Assembly or any legislature is a political institution. Therefore, whatever comes in there will be viewed even from political angles. Interest will come in, and it's going to have a give and take situation. And if at the end of the day, you cannot reach a consensus, in fact, one of the functions of the legislature is consensus building. So you must be able to have consensus on a particular issue before you can push it through.
Some of the delegates have described, I mean, Chief Uwazuruike is one of them. They've described these recommendations as one that our life as a country, if we must move forward, is relies on. If you, I mean, advise us, tell us now, the nation is watching. Everybody wants you to tell us. How can we lobby these into the National Assembly? So it's not watered down and it's not jettisoned. And we want the recommendation. We want to move forward as a nation.
The legislature, don't forget, we have a bicameral legislature. You have the House of Representatives, whose representation is population-based. You also have the Senate, whose representation is based on equality of states. Now, the situation or the scenario that plays out in the Senate may not be the same that plays out in the House of Representatives.
So it's more than just setting up a committee.
It's more than that.
The president should be talking to the lawmakers.
Well, the report of the ministerial committee must even be available to Mr. President first before it
Let
takes
me allow
it
Chief Uwazuruike, who sat at the hallowed chamber of the National Conference. Tell us, the president said, to me, the National Conference is the greatest centenary gift to our country that we must cherish and sustain. You believe so?
Of course. Of course, for the 4.5 months that most of us were there, believe you me, we worked with a passion to come out with very solid and workable recommendations. But there were also others who worked with a passion to scuttle the conference from inside. The animosity was so much at a point that some people were threatening to walk out. But thanks to the sagacity of Justice Kutigi, his deputy, Bode, and then Bola Kimi, and then, of course, the secretary, Dr. Mrs. Azinge. Those things are workable and are practicable. But first, you must understand the divisions. One is for the executive. They don't need any legislature. I'll just give you one that most people don't even realize the implication. Once a month, the accountant general summons all the people, the minister for finance and all the commissioners of finance from all states. They meet once a month to share the money. They call it revenue allocation. Within 2 weeks, virtually all the governors will have exhausted all their money. They will go to the banks to go and borrow. And those banks are the banks that receive their money. The banks will lend them happily. And when the allocation comes, the bank will take its own and take its commission and feel very proud of itself. Now, if you are a manufacturer and you want to borrow money from a bank, the bank will not give you. They will rather wait for the governors. Now, we suggested that instead of doing that once a month, why don't you do that every 2 weeks? So that the banks will be free to use their money to finance viable infrastructures and the manufacturing sector. Mr. President doesn't need anybody to direct him on that. But then you have the one for the judiciary, where the Chief Justice of Nigeria can issue her own as practice direction. It enables us to have justice faster. But now, the other one that is really the kernel of the issue is the one that concerns the judiciary. We have one volume, draft bills. We have another one, amendments to the 1999 Constitution. Those ones must pass through the legislature Because under the Constitution, it's the National Assembly that has the power to make laws.
All right, Chief,
Hold on.
Okay.
This thing is very important because
Right,
people
go
have been
ahead.
talking of no enabling law, no thing setting up national confab. There could not have been any enabling law to give the national confab the power to make laws. It is not possible because the Constitution says only the National Assembly and no other body. So National Assembly must do its own bit. They are not spirits, they are from us. Definitely not this present legislature. The next one, we use it as campaign issue. If, for instance, a state is recommended for my own area, what will I do? I promise my people I'll see it through. To see it through means to work positively for the confab report.
Let's listen to President Jonathan on the confab, exactly what he said in his own words. Take a listen to him now.
I've made the commitment that we will act on the recommendations of the conference. This I have started by setting up the ministerial committee headed by the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation to work out the modalities for implementing the report. Every promise I make, God willing, I'll see to its fulfillment. I assure you, we shall implement the report.
Again, very much in his own words, we shall implement. And he said, God willing. Well, he knows that he probably will not be able to do it by his own powers. God willing, we will implement. We that he meant, I guess, is the tiers of government that he's talking about, I guess.
Of course, the 3 tiers. Because those decisions are in 3 divisions. Executive, judiciary, then the legislature.
Just briefly, because before, just round up so that we can move to other issues. In summary, how important is the confab recommendations to our lives? 54 years now.
No,
will the recommendations take us to where we should, on the path of where we should be going?
Yes, we review the activities of the last 100 years, not 54 years. And then we're saying the next 100 years, a future generation will come up and look at what we have done and say we're on the right path. For us, we looked at every aspect of national life. The only thing we didn't discuss was the breakup of Nigeria. Some attempted to bring it up, but they never really got the support. But as for the meticulous steps to be taken, any government that wants to succeed, whether the federal or state, must go through those reports.
Very interesting. Senator Mamora, tell us, how important do you think the recommendations from the confab is?
You will recall that I did say in my opening remarks that I want to commend the conferees of coming up with something. And like Chief Uwazuruike just said, because as a member of that confab, you know, there are different aspects. You talked about what the administrative recommendations. Even administrative recommendations will require political will to implement. So we're hoping, and that may be part of what Mr. President was referring to by saying God willing as well, because it takes a political will, no matter how good your recommendation is, that is even administrative in nature, you require that political will to get them implemented. My worry has to do with where you really need legislative input, particularly as it affects amendment to the Constitution. You know, and don't forget again, Chief Uwazuruike said some people at the confab, you know, they were trying to sabotage it. These same people, don't be surprised, will also lobby their own.
No, they're still meeting.
In the various houses.
So after the conference.
After the conference, still meeting to make sure the conference does not work.
Interesting. You know. Interesting things are happening in this country. Well, the 1st of October national presidential address is perhaps going to be the last for President Jonathan, or, well, the last before another term, well, depending on the result of the elections of February 2015. He might come back to give another one on October 1st, 2015. Or, if he's not able, if he's returned, well. But after we'll come back, he said very instructive things about the 2015 general elections. You want to be part of that conversation? Join us again.